Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Now this is Assassin's Creed Valhalla. I've been looking forward to this game for a long time and I'm very excited to finally be able to play it. Today we'll be seeing how it performs when running on Ubisoft's stated minimum system requirements. Now Ubisoft have actually provided a wonderfully detailed system spec sheet, even going as far as to tell us what we should be able to achieve with certain PC hardware. For example, we'll be testing the minimum specs today, more specifically a combination of an i5-4460, 8GB of 1600MHz dual channel memory, and an R9 380 4GB graphics card, which should give us on paper an average of 30 FPS at Full HD. This system is actually my sister's, and while she usually uses the i5 along with a Radeon 5500 XT, I've swapped it out for the HP R9 380 that we tested the other day. Bear in mind that Windows and the game will actually name this as an R9 200 series card because it is essentially a rebranded R9 285. I thought I'd mention that because it will show up as a 200 series card in the game's metrics. So, can you play Assassin's Creed Valhalla with the minimum system specs with at least 1080p 30 FPS? Let's start off with the benchmark. The game actually has built-in performance stats that can be enabled with F1, a very welcome inclusion for us tech YouTubers, or anyone who just wants to see how their hardware can run the title. Bear in mind that this is an open world game, so performance will differ depending on where you are in the world. Firstly, we have the settings. I started with the low preset, not expecting much to be honest, and here I made sure that VSync was off as well as the frame limiter. I also checked that we were running at Full HD 1080p and not an adaptive resolution. With things looking good, I began the in-game benchmark, and honestly, considering this is also a PS5 and Xbox Series X launch title, I thought the PC release might be super intensive, and while there are some stutters due to the 4-core 4-threaded i5, the overall experience was honestly fine. This is if you don't mind 30 FPS of course, but we are getting what was advertised here, 1080p 30 FPS with the low preset, and that's not really bad at all, considering the game still looks pretty nice. It seems that Ubisoft have actually done a pretty good job with the minimum specs. Whether the recommended and other specs are accurate, well, any of you guys with said specs will have to let me know, but the R9 380, 8GB of RAM and i5 are seemingly okay here. If we look at the actual results at the end of the test, then it's clear from the graph that we dropped a few frames here and there, but even the 1 and 0.1% lows were okay. The first time round, they were a lot lower, which was strange, but every time that I've reran this test, the results were very similar or identical to this example. I then decided to switch to the medium preset, thinking that this would throw us below that 30 FPS threshold, but I was wrong. Running the benchmark again felt very similar to the low settings, and in fact we only saw about 6 frames less on average when using this preset. The game certainly does look a bit better, and honestly if I was targeting 1080p 30 FPS, then I'd just go for the medium preset for sure, but I might cap the frame rate to 30, just so that any stutters that occurred felt less noticeable, because at medium the frame times were certainly worse, as reflected by our 1 and 0.1% lows at the end of this test. The i5-4460 is still holding up pretty strong and can be quite a strong performer in other instances as well, even in 2020, and what's great about that is that it can be had for a significantly reduced price these days. Personally, I'd still aim for something with 8 threads though, just to be sure. But when it comes to real-world gameplay, does it fare worse or better? Well, I've left the in-game metrics up on screen here, which detail the frame rate and my chosen settings, and as you can see here, remaining with the medium preset still gave us at least 30 FPS at this point in the story. As I said before, this is pretty early on, so results may vary, but again, this was smoother than I anticipated. I really need to do a better job of familiarising myself with the controls, which is probably obvious from my combat skills, but I was so focused on the performance stats here and seeing whether or not we were dropping below 30 that I didn't really take a moment to think that I was almost getting wiped out by the enemy every second. Now it's fair to say that there isn't too much going on in this scene, but we are getting into a little bit of trouble with the enemy. You may have seen earlier as I took the first swipe at the other Viking, there was a brief moment where the game stuttered like really quickly. It just happened and then the game went back to normal. That was the only time I saw a drop like that as soon as we started engaging with the enemy there. We are at this early point in the story. Gameplay may differ, performance may differ as we move through the title. I do wonder as well whether or not the fact that I'm running this game on an SSD helps. A traditional hard drive may actually be a little worse because an SSD is recommended even as part of the minimum spec, so there is that to bear in mind too. I then switched back to the preset that we'd begun with during the benchmark testing, which was of course low, and then started to take on some more enemy Vikings around the same area. The real-world gameplay in this instance reflected the benchmark results once again, and because of the small-ish difference between low and medium, I personally play with medium because visually the game does look somewhat better, and we're not sacrificing too much in terms of the frame rate. Overall then, while you shouldn't build a PC that caters to one game in particular, a statement I repeat with all of these videos, you can play Assassin's Creed Valhalla with these parts. And honestly, that was quite surprising considering some of the footage that I saw before the release of this game. Now, of course, it's not all fantastic news. I have read reports and even seen a couple of videos whereby cards like the 750 Ti, for example, one of my favourite all-time cards, doesn't even start the game. So, yeah, that's not ideal. I think this can be added to the list of others now that it is about 3 games long. I think Dirt 5 and Death Stranding also failed to start with the 750 Ti, something to do with its lack of true DX12 support or something like that. I think there's a workaround for Death Stranding, and maybe we'll see one for this title too, but yeah, it's not looking good for that card as we approach 2021. What I would love to hear though is from your experiences with this game. If you got the game on launch day, how's it running for you on your hardware? If you have similar hardware to me, are you seeing similar results? Let me know what you think, of course, down below. Were you expecting the game to do better or worse with this hardware? Leave all your comments and thoughts down below because I love to read through them. All that's left to say then is thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, leave a like on it down below. If you didn't, leave a dislike. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Also, let me know whether you think I should leave this game as part of the current benchmark roster, because I'm having a blast playing through it, and I think it's one of those that will be ideal to test some older cards with. Not to mention older CPUs as well, because it seemed to do a better job with the i5 here than I initially thought. But the R9 GPU actually seems to be the limiting factor here, and not the 4-threaded processor. And honestly, I thought the opposite would be true, given that the previous games in the series were very CPU dependent. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.